Okay, so there's a couple of ways to create these finger joints. Because I've got nice woodworking machinery, I took this wood that I had and I cut it to have the dimensions that I want. And basically the dimensions that I want would be that when measuring it across like this, you can see it's about 36 millimeters. And when measuring it across like this, it should also be about 36 centimeters. So that means that when I stagger these planks and I push this middle one back, it gives me that opening that I was looking for my finger joint. And then of course the other thing would also be true. If I push them past in that direction, it also gives me the finger joint. Okay, so I've got fancy woodworking machines. What happens if you have just scraps of wood like this, or scraps of cardboard, or scraps of balsa wood? You can see that they're all different widths. There's a thin one, there's some wider ones. So first we want to measure the width of this piece, which is about 6 millimeters. So that means if I triple that, because I'm going to have 3 layers, I want the width of this to be 18 millimeters. So if I cut it off somewhere over there, I can actually get 2 widths out of this. Let's have a look and see how wide this piece is. Sometimes you're lucky. So this piece is just too wide to use. So I could trim it, and that would also give me a nice, long, useful piece. Or I could just use what I've got here. If this were a big sheet of cardboard or a big sheet of polystyrene that was 6 millimeters thick, I would then cut that 6 millimeter thick sheet into obviously 18 millimeter strips. Another case might be true, like let's say I want to go for the same dimensions that I've got here that I used, where each piece was 36 mil thick, and each individual piece is 12 mil thick. So if I wanted to work on this scale, I could obviously layer these up to be twice as thick. And then I could cut them, instead of to 18 millimeter widths, I would cut them to 36 millimeter widths. Another thing that I could do, if the material was very thin, like a kind of thickish compressed board or cardboard, then I could use 3 layers or 4 layers, as long as I can work it out that the unit that I've got, like over here I've got a unit, its width or its thickness and its width are 1 to 3. So the width is 3 times as wide as the thickness. However you arrive at that situation, that's all you have to do to get the thing you want to work with. And then whether you have Bostik or Prit or glue gun or wood glue or any kind of glue in your house, even double-sided tape, you can then start to work with polystyrene, with balsa wood, anything that's manageable for you. If your parents have woodworking machinery and they can guide you in how to use it, you're welcome to try that. But I mean, for most people, something that you can cut with a craft knife and stick together with simple glue would obviously be the most convenient, and that wouldn't make dust and things like that. So I mean, just go with whatever's easier. And then once you've got that, you can start working on your sculpture. One thing I want to point out, okay, so let's have a look at this blue guy. If I measure the distance from there to there, and I see it's about 18 millimeters, and I measure the distance from there to there, and it's about 70 millimeters. Because of the overlap, I've got to try and remember that that whole piece is going to go overlap, and the center of that will overlap with that whole piece. So if I were going to make it on this scale, I could make it 18 millimeters long, and let's say each of my pieces was 5 millimeters thick, so I would let's say use 2 stacks, so I would get it 10 millimeter thick. No, I would actually use a single stack, because this thigh is about I mean, it's less than 20 millimeters. So if I had a 5 millimeter thick cardboard, that would actually be a good thickness for making this thigh. And then the arms might be a bit bulky, which is the same thing that happened with my artwork. But that's why I was saying at the end we would trim the arms to get the sleek human look that we're going for. And then I've always got to remember, it overlaps there. So, for example, on the hip, in my calculations, I account for the fact that there's an overlap. And then the spine overlaps. So you're always keeping that overlap in mind. It's almost like you're going from the center point to the center point of that imaginary hinge. And otherwise, if you measured only up to the edge of where the calf begins and then you went further, you'd have a missing space and your thing wouldn't be able to have a strong finger joint. So that overlap is a very important concept in the finger joint. And as I've described, when the overlap becomes more than 90 degrees, you have to cut away some parts of the thing. So let's stop that piece over there.